as Bill would say, state and church.
What would Jarvis do?
Jarvis said.
And sure enough, there's this lady in there, and she yells, you're going to get shot. And they threatened that we were going to get shot if we continued on the path we were going. And Jarvis is the guy that I used to hunt elk with. He knows. I was like, all right. Jarvis says, I'm going to make a bumper sticker.
And chasing some pigs or, having some fun
Shooting
down there.
Some liberals or pigs.
Yeah.
Just kidding.
There's plenty of
either
pigs.
one.
Yeah. We could probably get away with either one down there. But just don't tell them you're going to shoot them because
under
if you
a 10-round
do that,
mag only.
Welcome to the RNA Outdoors podcast, fueled by Ripcord Arrow Rest and First Light Hunting Apparel. At RNA, we are public land DIY conservationists that love to share our passion for the outdoors. So join us and our team as we interview professionals in the industry to share insight knowledge that helps make hunters and anglers more successful. Hey listeners, subscribers, and fellow outdoorsmen and women. This is your host, Lucas Paw, and I'm excited to tell you about some of the sponsors that continue to help make this podcast not only happen, but grow and thrive in this digital world of audio content. This podcast is brought to you by Ripcord Arrow Rest, the bow hunter's #1 fall-away rest on the market. Ripcord is known for 100% full-time arrow containment and their patented drop-dead brake system that eliminates launcher bounce back. Best of all, Ripcord is backed by their rock-solid guarantee. If the original owner has a part break for any reason, it will be repaired or replaced at no charge. And did I mention? Ripcord is located in southwest Montana, where all their products are made with pride in America. Check them out at ripcordarrowrest.com and on their social media feeds. This podcast is brought to you by First Light Clothing and Hunting Apparel. Born in the Rockies in central Idaho, First Light's mission is to create simple, yet proven, versatile gear that provides comfort and performance in any situation while working to promote the pursuit of ethical hunting and stewardship. I recently joined the First Light Pro Staff team and have continued to be impressed year after year in their innovations in engineering of merino wool fabrics. 10 years ago, they started putting out wool fabrics with camo patterns, and immediately this changed the game. Since then, they offer multiple layering systems and kits in various proprietary patterns and continue to raise the bar with their competition. Find them online at firstlight.com or under their social media feeds. Go farther, stay longer. All right, welcome folks to the RNA Outdoors podcast. I am your host, Lucas Paw, coming to you on location here in Colorado. We've been chasing elk. Well, I would say we've been hunting elk. I wouldn't necessarily say chasing elk, but we've definitely had a week's worth of interesting stories and adventures based on the last 7 to 8 days that we've been trying to harvest an elk here on the western slope in Colorado. So just a kind of quick overview, got here last Friday and set up a camp and did some scouting, and to our, I guess, demise, if you will, have been unsuccessful at this point in harvesting an elk, which a lot of it's, could be based on weather. Some of it could be based on pressure from other hunters, but at the end of the day, there just hasn't been a lot of elk that we've seen during our course of our last 7 to 8 days chasing elk. But before I go into that any farther, I want to introduce my guest on the show today, who is a good friend, who is someone that I met, I would say probably maybe 10 years ago, 8 to 10 years ago.
Something like that. It's been a while.
Which I think the last time I came hunting in Colorado, rifle hunting, was in 2000. I think it was 2009 or 2010. So it's been almost 8 years since I've been here. And both Cyrus and his dad, Billy, have taken us in and have always been, very helpful when my one of the guys on our podcast in the past, John, who's come with us or who's come with me in the past here to Colorado, have always been very hospitable and just really enjoyed my visit, staying here in just outside of Montrose, Colorado, and getting to hang out with Cyrus. And I'm not sure he exactly wanted to do the same style of hunting that I did, but we did endure a little bit of pain together on the mountain, which was good. But anyway, I'd like to welcome Cyrus Goodhart to the RNA Outdoors podcast. Welcome, Cyrus.
How you doing?
Doing pretty good. So, music songwriter turned elk hunter in the last week, huh?
Oh, I've always hunted, but been pretty spoiled the past few years. The place we've got, you can oftentimes shoot them out the window. So
yeah.
The 9-mile hikes with 50 pounds on your back just to get to nowhere is not a new experience, but I haven't done it probably since my dad used to force me to go when I was like 5 or 6,
Yeah.
But it's awesome. It's a great experience either way.
Yeah, we so just to kind of backtrack a little bit, had been talking with Cyrus over the last month or so and trying to set up just an idea when we were going to get here and what we were going to do. And Cyrus has been very hospitable and been awesome during this stay. And surprisingly, took off a little bit of time of work to go chase elk around the country with me in the last week. And it's been a little underwhelming, but at the same time, it's been really fun and it's been a good adventure. We've seen a lot of country that I know I haven't seen, some country that, you lived here for a large part of your life and you haven't seen either. So there's definitely some merit in just getting out in the woods and seeing country that most people in their life will never see.
It was an 8-day scouting trip for next year is what it turned into.
Yeah.
But yeah, I covered some great country for sure. Got to see a lot of new parts that I haven't, as a grown man have been to. I followed my dad around for years hunting, and now we're kind of getting into some of that country as well and kind of learning it on our own. So it's pretty cool, Got to see some great animals in places that we could not get at them at. So yeah, just to kind of recap. So like I said, I showed up last Friday and we went and set up a camp in an area that in the past we've been successful in, an area that I know you have a lot of history in and your dad does, and a mutual friend of ours who's no longer with us anymore, but a guy that we salute to and we think about a lot, Sean Walsh, Mr. Cowboy. And that's actually one of the fond memories I have of this area was him showing up and helping us pack out a bull I'd shot many years ago. But, we'd set up camp, and it was kind of interesting because the area that you and I wanted to kind of get to, there was already a camp set up there, which was a little underwhelming, but we ended up finding a pretty good place to camp out, and we stayed there for about almost 2.5 days, and we glassed this area. I would say we spent on average probably 5 to 6 hours behind binoculars for those days, and we didn't see a single elk. Yeah, there was, that's a great spot historically for us both. I've never been in there and not seen one, and the weather was warm this year, and, there was a lot of cattle in there that they hadn't brought out yet, and they'd done that burn last year, and I don't know, it was just a little different. There was more pressure than I'd seen in there before. And, of course, with those guys just running ATVs in and out early in the morning and late at night and all the times that you didn't want them in there. And
yeah.
So that was pretty tough. I mean, beautiful country. Saw some mule deer, but, yeah, the elk were not in there this time, which was rare.
It was a little disheartening, the fact that, we would be set up. We'd be there right at first light, and you'd see the lights of an ATV driving through the trails, and then you'd see multiple ATVs, coming across the ridge line and down. And it's just, it's public land hunting, and that's what we deal with, being in Colorado, and a lot of other states deal with that too. But it's just like from an ethical standpoint, it's like, people don't realize how, disruptive that can be, driving an ATV or Ranger through prime elk country, during that time of morning. So that was pretty disheartening to find that.
Yeah, that's frustrating. Like we had talked about, I think it's, if you get something down, that's what you've got to get it out with. That's cool. But yeah, when they're running through there in the prime hours of light and the darkness, in the evening and the morning, where the time when the elk are moving and you've got guys raging through on big ATVs, it really spooks any animals that might be in there and really takes down your chances of glassing something and getting a shot. So.
Yeah. The first night we camped out, we actually got some rain and a little bit of weather, which we thought would be, something, would be a good thing to have a little weather up on that ridge. Hopefully actually thinking that a little snow might drop, which might push some of the elk down into that area that we were into. But again, spent multiple days in there, spent a lot of time behind optics and just couldn't turn up any elk. So we decided to kind of bag that camp location and base out of your place here and just kind of be a little more remote, where we ended up heading a little farther south into the Telluride area, which you're pretty familiar with because you do a lot of work down there. But we actually got into our first elk sighting that night when we went over Lost Dollar Road, and we were coming over in the private properties, and there was probably, I would say, 75 to 100 elk that crossed the road right in front of us, and all we could do was look at them, unfortunately.
Yeah, it's always exciting when you see a bunch of ones you wish you could shoot and can't.
Yeah, exactly. There was probably 4 or 5 legal bulls in that group. There was another one that we couldn't see that was bugling. So a little unfortunate, but again, it was nice to actually get into an area where we could actually see some elk, where we had spent the last couple days not seeing any elk at all. So spent some time down there and, again, putting a lot of time behind glass. And what was interesting on a couple of these areas is, when you get up to places around like Telluride, you're anywhere from 10 to 11,000 feet. And we had pulled into this area that we had hunted in the past and didn't have success, but had seen elk in this area. And right at first light, you're looking up on this ridge, and you see this just little orange speck walking across the face of this ridge. And it was just incredible that every time that we went somewhere around almost every crevice that we looked at, every place we went, there was hunter orange.
Yeah, man. Public land is... I think what's made it harder is the apps and the maps and the Google Earths and things like that anybody can, spots that old timers knew about that no one ever knew about. Now all you got to do is punch in an area and you can see it. And on one hand, it's super helpful to the average hunter, but when you're hunting public land hunts, it can make it really frustrating because there's nowhere you can go where someone hasn't been or isn't going to be. And
sure,
it's been tough. I mean, private land has definitely been our best luck seeing animals this year, but still hasn't turned it out for us. So yeah, it's tough.
Yeah, we had spent a little time, and we used some of the the services like Onyx Maps and some of the other ones that are really, really good resources for trying to find public lands or Forest Service lands. But we had found a section of state land that we thought, had accessibility because we'd actually, at once glassed up some elk and saw some bulls in there, and we actually kind of get excited. Come to find out that it was a landlocked piece of section that basically the property owner had the lease rights to it, and unfortunately we couldn't get in on that piece of land. But that would have been an excellent place to go, and like you say, with some of these applications, they help find locations like that most people probably had no idea that area was actually state of Colorado land.
Yeah, we did that. We kind of discovered through talking to the wardens and other people and doing some research that there's pieces of land that back in the day when Colorado became a state, and it might have been an area that wasn't homesteaded but didn't belong to anybody. It went to the state. So this is a 650-acre tract of land that only the people that live up against can utilize, and typically one of them has the lease on it, and they don't let people in, which if it was mine, I probably wouldn't either. But glassing elk, seeing the first legal elk, we saw that we could shoot and get into that gate, and realizing that, no, it wasn't going to happen. That was definitely a bummer, but
yeah, that was a letdown.
Part of it.
We also had a little bit interesting experience as we were driving the road. We had identified what appeared to be hunter orange person kneeling on a piece of private property. And I drove by, and I think I saw it, and you saw it too, and you're like, no, that's just a guy that laid his vest down there. But we spun around and drove back to try to find that road to get on that piece of state property. And there was a guy there kneeling down.
Over like a gut bag or something too. There had been a kill there, so it was a pretty It was pretty odd. It was like didn't realize he was in Hunter Orange and probably didn't want to be seen. And
as he was sitting right on the road and kneeling down.
It was odd.
That was an interesting.
And then a truck passed while we were coming up, and we saw headlights again in the same area. And when we got back there, guy was gone.
The guy was gone. So who knows what's going on there? But I'm sure a lot of stuff like that goes on, and most people don't know about it. But we found another interesting spot in there that was Forest Service land that was actually bordered on three sides with private property, and we had spent some time and gone in there and saw a lot of sign, saw a lot of areas what would look like probably more of a primo type archery hunting scenario with a lot of rubs and a lot of good sanctuary for elk, during the day. But again, we get to a point and we think we found a place that's just money, and we end up finding a camp with 5 tents and then 3 hunters on the ridge, basically
kind of a weird
looking at us.
Gypsy looking camp out in the middle of the forest. Neither time we passed were there people in it, but lots of tracks and yeah, we hiked, a couple miles in through Timberfall, and we had to skirt, there was a path that went through the private that those guys were taking, and we're just not comfortable taking private, you don't trespass. That's kind of a key thing in the West. And so we cut all the way around through all this deadfall and find this beautiful spot and, get out and start to glass. And sure enough, there's one guy sitting on the opposite hill, and then we see 2 more guys in the trees. And, we saw a lot of hunters on our elk scouting trip.
Yeah. I don't think there was anywhere we went that we didn't see somebody. I mean, even coming back to some of the forest here, we had got into some areas that we thought were going to hold some elk. We heard some bugles, and then sure enough, we look up and you literally see just bright orange. And
it's just tough, man. It's like public land hunting is a gamble. I mean, my neighbor, he has the cattle lease on the country behind us, and he's like, man, it don't matter what you take. If you take a bull elk on public land, you've done quite a feat, because it's, you've got how many guys? I mean, hundreds of guys in certain square miles that are all trying for the same thing you're trying for. And so it's, you can get lucky, but that's, unless something that someone else doesn't, it's kind of luck of the draw. If there's enough guys in there and the right spot to sit, they'll push them to you. But it's when you got 6 guys in 3 square miles of land trying to cover it, and there's elk in there. It's just a matter of who sees it first, because it can be a gamble, but it's hunting,
Yeah. And this year, the second season, I typically have hunted always the third season, because generally there's been weather that's come in and it's kind of pushed elk into certain areas that we've been successful in. But trying the second season, something a little different this year, thinking, because sometimes the second season will bring weather. A lot of times there'll be snow in mid-October, and then sometimes November it can be, kind of like an Indian summer where you get these big, these warm days. But this year, especially in the second season, we haven't seen probably temperatures, probably average, I would say, in the 50s and 60s as highs, and lows maybe in the 30s. So
it's been, last year was the direct opposite. Our mutual friend John Howe, he came out to hunt with me last year, and second season he came out for third. Second season we had snow. There were bulls in here. I harvested one right out the living room window at a beautiful 6x6, and John showed up, and the weather was warm, and the moon was full, and we could sit here at the house and watch. The most we had was 11 bulls and about 22 cows within 50 yards in the dead of night. The moon was full, so you could glass them and watch them fighting and doing their social thing. And right before you could get shooting light, they just faded off into the woods. So it's, you never know. I mean, I would always count on third, but last year third was tough. But normally it's probably I'd give third an 80% chance of good elk weather, which means to me snow.
Sure.
Second can be warm, and second's always a little tougher for sure.
Yeah, I think what Colorado posts in their successful, or at least in their information that they get from hunters and their harvest reporting is around 10%. I think of elk hunters are successful in second season. So, 1 in every 10 people harvest an elk, and 9 people go home, that season without harvesting an elk. So not great not great harvest statistics.
I don't like to be one of the 9.
Exactly. But I mean, that's just the way it is. I mean, and that's hunting. And, that's why I think what keeps a lot of people coming back is, they're successful one year and they think that they're going to go to the same spot again and be successful again. And, we were a prime example of that, thinking that, our little honey hole that we've been successful in years past just was not turning up anything this year.
Yeah, it's a hard thing because you can, do you sit at one place for 9 days and the probability of seeing something is fair? It's you're covering, how many acres, maybe 100 or 300 acres, depending on how well your glassing spot is. And yeah, there's a chance, you could see something, but then do you start moving around and get lucky or, just never know.
It's always a gamble.
I mean, I like to sit in a spot and glass it, but like we did, we sat for 2.5 days and, only saw 5 mule deer, not a single elk, no lions, no bears, nothing else surprising. That we were hunting for. So yeah, that can, you can only hope for so long before you have to like make a change and try to at least be proactive. And we did find elk, but then, we went up and did that long pack in and another experience that was entertaining.
One that I'll probably never forget. So yeah, you and I went into one of your dad's favorite glassing spots and, we kind of dropped into an area where we got away from where, a lot of the traffic was. And I think you went down maybe 50 to 100 yards below me. And, within a few minutes we had spotted some elk way, way, way up high. We were already at probably 82 to 8,500 feet. And these elk were, just below the Cimarron range, which is, anywhere from 10 to 11,000 feet. But we kind of made a game plan to say, let's throw on a pack and a bivvy and let's spend the night and go up there and try to turn up these elk. So we did. So probably around midday, we go up and we start on the trail around, I'd say it was 11:30, 12 o'clock. And as we're starting to go out onto the trail, these 3 guys from Ohio were walking out, which was interesting because the look on their face kind of told a story to me.
It was like ultimate defeat.
Exactly. 3 guys, no packs, rifles on their shoulders, walking out, and just did not look like they were having a good time.
Yeah, I've certainly hiked up worse trails, but it looked like them old boys had gone in pretty deep without probably the proper stuff and walked out defeated. And yeah, they barely even talked to us when they went by. I mean, they were tired as dogs. They were ready to get back to the truck. We're a mile in looking at them like, oh damn, what did we get into,
Yeah. So we were going in and, it was an absolutely beautiful, breathtaking, trail. I mean, the trail was probably 2 to 3 people wide. So there was no issues with, losing the trail and not knowing where you were going. And, we were just kind of basically working our way in, taking breaks when we needed them. One break in particular, we stopped because I was getting pretty hot. So I started pulling layers off. And all of a sudden a cow starts cow calling.
Yeah, I'm sitting there drinking a Gatorade and Lucas is down to his boxers, changing out his damn long johns. And we start hearing cow calls. And so I set down my Cliff Bar and my Coke or whatever I was drinking and pull out my 308 out of the pack and kneel down behind the tree, and he's cow calling and his boxers trying, and we're talking to it, and it turned out it must have just been a lone cow, or she was, she never came in, but I was really hoping that might have been our shot.
Yeah. So yeah, we continued up, and long story short, the trail ended up being, I think we did 13 miles that first day. As we were ascending up, I mean, it was a continual grind all the way up. I mean, there were parts that flattened out, but generally for the most part, it was a straight, solid, gradual incline all the way in. We saw a nice mule deer going in. We saw a nice buck going in, but, was a little disappointed in the fact that, didn't see a whole lot of elk sign when we went in on the trail. Definitely saw some great elk habitat. I mean, areas that were nice little parks with aspens and, little ponds. I mean, areas that you would think would just be awesome places that would hold elk. But the whole area that we went in basically bordered private property. which for the most part, the private property areas seems to be where a lot of the elk hang out. But so we got up to a location that we thought we were, going to sit. So we ended up setting up our little spike camp that we had, which was actually not a bad little area, thinking that, we're back in here, 8 to 10 miles. There's not going to be anybody back in the forest up here.
Yeah,
right?
we were in there deep, set up in the black timber, kind of just, I don't know, maybe 20, 30 yards off that first park, downwind, and, set up camp. By that, we mean we laid sleeping bags in the sticks and dropped off anything we didn't have to carry. And then we proceeded to start to skirt the parks.
Yeah. And so we were just kind of taking our time because we had identified these. There was 3 or 4 different parks that sat basically right below this rock outcropping that looked like it was just going to hold elk. I mean, like no question that this was going to have elk in it. So immediately we start walking through the skirt of this park, and we're seeing, we're seeing all different types of carcasses. We saw one carcass that probably would have been within the last, I would say, 2 to 3 weeks, probably the first season, or maybe a late archery season or a muzzleloader. Saw the remains of lots of different, animals, both elk and just a lot of different bones that were spread out. So we're thinking, okay, we're probably in a pretty good area. So we skirt the first park, and you look back up, because when you look up back underneath the outcropping, there was a kind of nice little parks that went up against the actual rocks. And I see this bright orange sitting there right on a tree.
Bright orange vest just hanging on a stump. So we're, with all our hope we could muster, we're thinking, man, maybe somebody just left it here and forgot it.
Yeah, there's nobody there.
And so we walked on a little farther and turned back, and sure enough, there was a hunter it was kind of a blind they had set up there that, we saw him. He had taken his vest off and thrown it over the tree. And so, that many miles in, first park, feeling great, and then boom, dude set up right in the middle of it.
So that was pretty disheartening. Again, disappointing, frustrating. I mean, there's probably a lot more emotions. I think there was a few other explanatory words that we probably used by the time we had got in there. Because, again, we had done about a 5.5 hour pack in. We had anywhere from 50 to 60 pounds of gear on our back. And we were pretty whooped by the time we got in there, but we were excited to get there because we thought it was going to be a really good elk area. So we see him, we're bummed. We're like, okay, let's just keep moving down the meadow. Because, again, there was a whole string of these meadows that, again, just looked like they held elk. So we were skirting the second meadow. And you were probably, I would say, roughly maybe, 20 to 30 yards behind me. And we were just kind of, skirting through the pine trees, just trying to get a little vantage point. And all of a sudden, out of the middle of nowhere, I hear this, "Don't step out. If you do, you'll get shot."
Yeah, that was... Well, I'm still a little pissed off about it. But yeah, when this woman had been set up there. Lucas had seen her, but I hadn't. And we were far enough apart, and try not to be loud and just skirting the parks. And, when we saw the first guy, we cut back into the woods. I don't like to mess with other hunters' areas. So we cut in the woods and tried to go around, and sure enough, there's this lady in there, and she yells, "You're going to get shot." And that just, that's, there's an etiquette to alerting a person that you are in an area that they are in and you're there before them. And, I think any proper hunter would certainly, one, you alert them in some way. But, and then, if I always like, if I see someone else, I turn around, I go the other way, or I cut around and but I've never been...
Well, just out of respect, you do that.
Yeah, because, none of us, we all want the same thing. We all want to harvest an elk. And so, you want to go the other way and be polite. And we were so far out in the middle of nowhere. There's, in a normal situation, I'm not a huge fan of calling law enforcement, but that would be something that I would probably say, hey, there's this person, maybe they didn't mean to say what they said, but they threatened that we were going to get shot if we continued on the path we were going. And also they were set up, the pathway went through those parks. The Forest Service trail went right through the middle of those parks. And we were staying off of that just for our own benefit. But yeah, that was, it really pissed me off. Lucas took it a little better than I did, but Maybe my temper's hotter.
I think I internalized it a little differently, but at the same time, I was frustrated because one, I've never been threatened like that in the woods, and two, you have humans out there in the middle of nowhere that all have high power rifles, and you never really know, is someone serious about what they're saying, or is the person they're saying it to someone who is loony enough that would maybe
shoot
do
back.
something. Exactly.
I mean, that's there's a hunter etiquette that you learn when you take hunter safety, or if you had someone that trained you coming up. You say hunter, or you say, there's a lot of things you can say, but when you start to threaten someone with a firearm, that could have turned into a potential situation that someone could have got hurt or killed very easily.
Yeah.
And that's just something you don't do. She obviously was uneducated probably in just general hunting etiquette and firearm etiquette. Absolutely. I mean, you just don't say things like that to people with guns.
No. When
you've got a gun, because it's I don't know, you and me growing up, you learn the respect of a firearm. You never point it, you never threaten it, you never say you have it in a situation unless you're willing to use it. And so that was, that really kind of shot our first night, because you're skirting this park, hoping this person doesn't actually try to smoke you, and we're so many miles from anywhere, there would have never been a chance, so it was nerve-wracking,
It was, yeah, and I think the other part that we realized is as we continue to work down those parks, we saw orange flagging that basically marcated, the trail that they were supposed to take, and then as we got down to the farthest park, actually would have been to the, I would say, northwest, there was a tarp sitting there, so I think we realized that, they were probably being outfitted or some type of guide service in there that had them set up on those parks. So again, to each is their own. And, from an ethical standpoint, there's definitely different ways to handle that situation. We were no by means in there trying to screw up their hunt by any means, right? I mean, had we done that, we would have walked out in the park in front of them and tried to screw something up.
Well, and a big part of me, in a normal situation, I would have done something like that. But, I don't know. You're so far from anywhere, and that's not something you want to hear anywhere, let alone so far back in the woods that there's just nothing to do about it. So we both kept our mouths shut, which I know for me is a really hard thing to do. I don't know. I think it might be not quite as hard for Lucas, but it's still pretty hard. And you just had to suck it up and duck into the woods and pretend it didn't happen. And we found, you had a few other parks on your maps, and we ended up busting timber and scouting them. And
so it didn't end up being a necessarily bad trip by any means, but clearly we were, we were deflated based on the fact that we had spent all that time going in there, and to our demise, you literally walk out there and there's two hunters sitting there, which, they obviously accessed it through the private property, and they probably had a half a mile hike to get in there, versus us that can't access it through private, had to come all the way around in the forest land on the trail and get in. But again, was still to me rewarding, because, there was a lot of country there that we had identified that was really nice country, and I think definitely holds elk. It's just, if you got an outfitter in there, it's going to be tough to compete with that.
There were animals in there for sure, and that's the thing. We didn't, not that we didn't do enough research, but had we really done a little bit more research, we could have realized, that there were outfitters there, and that was probably, maybe there was good elk, but you got guaranteed guys set up, so it's going to be a tough thing to work around. And the next morning, there was no one in those parks, and we went out and scouted. And then, you saw Lucas. We finally see elk. Legal bulls on legal land. On state land that we can shoot. And we're at 10.5, and they're at 11.2 or something like that, 11.7 or something. Yeah.
So I mean, it was that again. Great trip. I mean, that evening when we got back to camp, we were basically melting snow for water. I mean, we were doing all the things that, most people wouldn't know how to survive in situations like that. But, we had dinner, we had a nice dinner. We were just kind of, shooting it about what happened that day. It ended up actually not being such a bad evening because, at the end of the day, we were still alive and we could talk about it.
No one took a hollow point to the back of the head.
Exactly.
But it was an awesome experience for sure. And, you gotta appreciate those kind of, not that particular situation, but just, you're 500 feet under the base of some of the tallest mountains on the Rockies, and it's pretty breathtaking. It's hard work to get there. When you harvest, it's even harder work to get out, but there's perhaps a little more reward. When you don't,
for sure.
When you don't, it can be tougher. But, we ran into some guys the next morning after we had spotted those elk up high, and we kind of deduced that we didn't have the proper gear or means to chase them at that point. So we had to go in and, they said, they had known that country a little better. They knew there were outfitters in there and stuff. And that's just something you got to learn. Sometimes you just got to go in and figure it out, and the next year you can plan around it.
Yeah. Yeah, it was interesting because we had hunted that morning and again went into those parks and had identified a group of about 15 elk. Looked like a couple good bulls in there, but just was out of our effective range at that point and really weren't prepared to spend, probably more than a couple nights in there based on the equipment that we had. And we hunted our way down, and these two old boys were coming up the trail and clearly looked about like what you and I probably look like, but would appear to be had taken them, quite less time to get to that point. And we weren't sure if they started maybe the day before and camped part way and came in, or if they maybe just, humped it that morning. But I tell you, it is definitely the look on everyone's face going through there. I'm sure ours was no different than the guys from Ohio, but it was just a gradual grind getting into that area where we got into eventually that evening.
Yeah, and it can be, those kind of hikes, when I was young, that's all my dad did. I'm talking when I was probably between 5 and 12 years old. We just point off in a direction and go. And you just sleep under a tree with a little campfire, and he was always pretty successful, and technology and a lot of things have changed the game on that, and now you can sit in glass, but it's, if you've never done it, it's absolutely an awesome thing to do, especially in this particular section of the Rockies, because it's just a breathtaking place to be.
Yeah. And that is one of the beauties of, having some of the technology now, at least not so much technology, but also the optics, is you can sit back, versus the days of just throwing on your gear, throwing your rifle on your back and going and walking, 5 or 10 miles and not even knowing where you're going. Now you can actually take the time, glass up some animals and try to figure out, a strategy to get in on those animals. That was the plan we had. Unfortunately, from the time we left the truck to the trail where the actual trail connected to where we wanted to go, it was still probably another 4 to 5 miles in. And again, there was no guarantees that those elk were on public land. They were on private land. From what it looked like, they were right on the skirt of the public and the private that evening that we had glassed them up. But you just never know. And in one night, those elk could move down, a mile down into the private, and you're totally hosed at that point because we don't have access to hunt that property. So
yeah, that it can be tough. And we had horses prepared and everything, if we needed to do a major pack out, but you're still talking, if we got lucky and if we had gotten in on them at the right time and the outfitters weren't in there, you're still talking a day to 2 day pack out with someone bringing horses up, locating where you're at, doing the whole thing. So it was, we got in there we had enough gear for the night we were there and another night, but as deep as the elk were, it would have been unwise with the way the temperature was dropping to go in farther and, risk something that wasn't worth risking. So, you see them and they're so close, but sometimes you got to just call it.
So far away, especially when your sleeping bag,
And when you lose a zipper on your Amazon bag.
Yeah, that's not a good thing.
But yeah, it was, it's, a lot of, the experience is so much different. You can outfit in and pack in and have mules and horses in a big old tent and fireplace and,
cook
you
shack,
can do all that. And that's awesome. That's an awesome way to experience it too. But it would have been pretty awesome if we had all that up there, because then we could have sustained 4 or 5 days up there chasing them, but sometimes you just got to throw a pack on and go in by yourself or, with a buddy and just see what you get. And you spot elk and you can't get to them. And this time of the year in those kind of mountains, you can, a snowstorm can be almost instant death if you're not prepared. So you gotta sometimes you got to call it, which is no fun to anyone that's got any pride when they're hunting or in general, because you're like, we could do it. We could probably do it. And then you probably could, hits. But you get that elk down at dark and don't get to him till 3 or 4 in the morning. And then what if a snowstorm blows? And there's a lot there's a lot of danger that comes with hiking in the Rockies in this time of the year. And so it sucks, but sometimes you got to call it.
Yeah. So we called it, we broke camp that morning. Like we said, we packed out of there. We ran into those 2 gentlemen. We talked to them for a little bit and just kind of shared a little bit of the stuff that we had. We didn't talk to them about the experience we had with the hunters, but we did tell them, kind of what we saw and where they were headed. So we worked our way out. I think it took us about 2.5 to 3 hours to get back to the truck, which I would say was probably very enlightening to see the truck because we knew there was Gatorade and water and food and other things there, which was pretty nice when we got back to the truck. And then we headed down into Ridgeway and fueled up and went and grabbed a burger at the
Full Tilt.
The Full Tilt. Yeah. It was
Full
an interesting
Tilt
place.
Saloon. Cool joint. If you're ever in Ridgeway, Colorado, hit it.
Yeah, it was good. So then we came back to the home base, and again, just kind of, I think we had exhausted Plan A, then we exhausted Plan B, then we were at Plan C. That was like probably Plan D.
Yeah,
so
we were getting so far down the alphabet, I started losing track of letters.
But we've seen just some incredible, property and areas that are bordered by private that have, good little pockets of Forest Service or, wildlife management areas that definitely hold elk. It just, this time of year without weather, we just didn't, seem to have much luck, and really just kind of focused around, some of the property here around your place and some of the Forest Service land here. And amazingly enough, there's bugle and bulls in this area.
That was the irony. The day we get back from that, we did 26 miles in basically 24 hours and beat up, and get back here and go out here behind our place because we're up on the Uncompahgre Plateau, and our land borders a large tract of public that's surrounded on about 3 sides by private. So it's a pretty good chunk, and we go hunt it. We automatically run into other hunters, and we get back home and having dinner and look out the window. I shine my flashlight out into the big field out in front of the house, and there's a big bull just sitting there, and it's 10 o'clock at night, well past shooting light, and we had done all those miles and been all over this half the state, and you just see a bull that you can't even have. That was, he's 75 yards away from you.
Yeah,
that's the beauty of living up here. Sometimes you get lucky, and then sometimes you work your ass off, and they just poke fun at you from the field.
Yeah, exactly. So we spent a couple days here on the plateau here, and have just kind of had some interesting experiences. I mean, everywhere we had gone, in I would say the higher country, the elk have been relatively silent, at least the ones that, we weren't really necessarily close enough to a lot of the elk to know whether they were bugling or the cows were calling. But, here on the plateau, I mean, clearly yesterday and this morning and also this evening, we've actually got into some pretty interesting bugle activity and cow calling activity with these elk.
Yeah, well, I've got permission, around this place to hunt all 4 or 5 of my neighbors' 40 and 80 acre parcels. So we went down to my south neighbor. He's got an 80, and one of us sat up in a tree stand. One of us sat down kind of by their cabin, and man, the elk were just going off. That was last night. Mm-hmm. 5:30 or so. They just started going off,
which is crazy because this time of year the elk. Typically if the bulls are bugling, it's not because they're in breed mode. It's just because they're bugling because they're bugling. I mean, there's really no reason for them to do it. But what's nice about it is when you got a rifle in your hand, you can locate them, and at least it can give you a little bit of an advantage to try to, slip in on those elk. But the funny thing is we were trying to talk back to them a little bit, cow calling and just some light, bugle contact action, and they were definitely responding to it, but there was by no means, any want to actually come into those calls.
It wasn't aggressive for sure. And, we were down, and there's a fence line between us and then a large parcel of private, several thousand acres of private. And we got them right up to the fence, and we couldn't see them. We never made eye contact, but, that bull was right there, and you could tell he didn't want he was nervous about the bugling and things, but he didn't want to leave his cows. And so, we were within less than 100 yards probably. And, and just couldn't visualize him or make the shot. So that's so close yet so far away.
Yeah. That's a part of it. And that's, again, when these elk are, basically bordered by, Forest Service land, you've got hunters staged all the way up basically
which
the trail.
We ran into, multiple, every 500 yards you got a hunter somewhere in the woods. And so it's challenging. I mean, there's no doubt that the challenge of over-the-counter public land forest service hunting in Colorado is anyone can show up, pay the money, buy the tag over the counter, and go hunting. And that's the beauty, I think, of Colorado, is that they have that ability to let people come in, and hunt the state. But part of the problem is, and I think part of the reason why the success rates are so low, is you have so many people in the field that they're driving quads through roads, and they don't understand scent control, and and they're doing wind things that are and wind and other things that are so critical in elk hunting that eventually drive, I would say, probably majority of the elk onto private property at that point, because the elk seem to get pretty smart when it comes to the rifle season and the time of year and know exactly what's going on. Yeah, they know when they're being bothered, and I think it's it's twofold, because you've got all that, and then that kind of directly equates to how much land that and we've learned a lot of new land this year. And I think the more you learn, you can still find places where there aren't a lot of people, but situations like this where we were just every corner we just hit a wall, and with other hunters or something, it kind of forces us, okay, so we found some places this year, and we're going to expound on those places and try to learn more country around here, because sometimes you're forced. I mean, sometimes you shoot them right off the deck. Sometimes you hunt for 9 days and can't even pull the trigger, you know? So it's a challenge. It's public land hunting in this state, and probably most, but certainly Colorado, it's hard. We're close to town. You got 300 or 400 guys coming up from Montrose here that are all hunting within the same, 50 square miles of each other. So it's, you get lucky and you don't,
on top of all the out-of-state hunters,
not even counting out-of-staters. And this is a huge area for the out-of-state hunting too.
We've run into guys from Ohio, Arkansas, Kansas. I mean, Texas,
everywhere,
all over. And it's a big deal for them to, come out west, and, they're used to sitting in tree stands hunting whitetails, and to come out here in the open pine country of the West and hunt the Rocky Mountains, it's a whole different scenario for them versus what they're used to. And it's interesting talking to some of them. Like we ran into those guys from Arkansas as those elk had crossed us on the private, and they're like, oh, there they are right there. It's like, well, yeah, there they are. The problem is none of us can have them.
It's not Arkansas, and we can't shoot them out of the truck.
Exactly.
But it can, public land hunting isn't glamorous, but man, there was the one camp we passed and they had 4 elk hanging, and so that's the thing. You gotta know your country for sure. You gotta know your land, and even though you've got all the apps and all the things, there's still spots where you can lock into the right place. I mean, it's an awesome place to hunt, but every now and then you walk away without anything.
Yeah,
so.
Well, and that's part of it. I mean, like you said, 9 people go home statistically, with a tag in their pocket, and whether they cook it in a can of soup or however they serve up tag soup. I'm not sure. Everyone has a little bit different recipe for it, but we still got one more opportunity tomorrow morning before I'm going to try to hit the road and get back. So it's hard to say, what that's going to bring. You just never know. I mean, we've been pretty persistent in the last, I would say, it's been 7 days since season opened. So we've definitely been after it, trying to knock an elk down, and haven't been successful. But again, to me, success isn't always derived by the end result of harvesting an animal. I think a lot of it is the camaraderie and being able to go out and enjoy public lands that we've been able to do, which is something that is definitely something that we've probably taken for granted, which is something that's slowly being taken away from us. So
yeah, for sure. I mean, it's awesome too. We've learned, you and I just going out hunting this season, we've learned so much new country that I'll certainly take opportunity to scout this year and maybe next year it'll turn out for us. You definitely can get comfortable with your spots, and then when someone learns about your spot, it ain't your spot anymore. So you got to continually.
There's a camp sitting where you wanted to camp.
You continually got to learn new country as a backup plan. Oftentimes, and the weather too. I mean, when it's hot in Colorado and a lot of the western states, the elk are going to be high. They just are, and so when you're hunting at 7,000 to 9,000, when the elk are at 10 to 12, your chances of seeing them just really minimize.
Yeah, it's tough. We got to spend a little time today. We got to see your dad. Got to see old meat cutter Bill. That was an interesting experience. Always going in.
My dad pulled out a list. He told us he had hunting spots, and he pulled out a piece of like yellow
8.5 by 11.
Yeah, just note paper, and it literally said hunting spots in quotations on the top. And he had hunting places listed on there since I'm 35 years old. And the first hunt I really remember with my dad, I was about 5, and we hunted out of the Gunnison Basin. I don't remember exactly where we were, but that was the second one on the list. And I'm like, Pops, this is the old list, and he's got, he probably
28 or 29, wasn't it?
I mean, at least. He had every line filled from the top to the bottom minus about 3. So whatever a standard sheet of, long paper is, but
that was pretty funny.
That was funny. And
Jarvis said
he had a couple spots. Apparently, he used to hunt with a guy named Jarvis. I never met the guy. It was probably when I was a teenager and wasn't hunting a lot. But yeah, he has this quote: between areas 65 and 70, good elk spot, and then in like quotations, Jarvis says. I'm like, Dad, who's Jarvis? He's like, Jarvis is the guy that I used to hunt elk with. He knows. I was like, all right.
Hey, Jarvis said it. That it's
Jarvis
all good.
says, I'm going to make a bumper sticker.
Yeah, so it's good to see your pops and always good-spirited and, again, always, good, has good intentions and wants to help us. And I think he's said he's got, a third season cow tag he's going to be focusing on. So.
Yeah, and that should be an easy fill. And
hopefully,
he's hunted this land. I'm 35. He's probably hunted this land since he was 30 years old himself. So we got to get that. We weren't close enough to a copier to get that hunting spots list, but sooner or later, me and Jarvis are going to get together and figure it out.
Yeah, and then we got to spend a little time with Bill, the meat cutter today. It was an interesting experience.
Bill.
Yeah, that was fun.
Well, old Bill, he's a elk hunter from way back, and yeah, he's got more stories than you can shake a stick at for sure.
Yeah.
Some beautiful animals he's harvested. He's a phenomenal butcher and phenomenal fisherman. I mean,
some of the fish he's caught.
One of my best old boys I know.
Yeah. No, that was neat to go in and look at some of the pictures and hear some of the stories. And it sounds like he's got a pretty good hunt lined up this year. He said he drew like a 4th choice to go shoot hopefully a big bull on some property that he knows.
He's got some old friends that have several hundred acres. I think out of Unit 70 here in Colorado, and I guess that old boy's been hunting it for 30, 40 years. So he guarantees 300 to 350s, and according to old Bill, he gets them every time. So I guess if I got invited to that party, I'd probably go too.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And it's like Bill said, he doesn't ask to be invited. He gets invited, and he does a little work on the side. So that's what I've noticed with a lot of people around here is from kind of, I would say, almost like a bartering standpoint. But, if you scratch someone's back, they'll scratch your back. And it seems like that there's a good relationship there with people that allow you, the ability. They're not going to invite you every year, but if you do something nice for them, they say, hey, come on out and hunt on my property this year.
Yeah, there's a lot of good folks around here. I mean, I grew up here and lived away for a long time in Texas and a few other places. But, yeah, there's a lot of good old boys and folks that want to help out, but, nothing's free. And, I mean, old Bill, he makes fishing rods. He's a phenomenal fisherman. He hand makes these beautiful rods. We saw some today. And so, yeah, he gave this guy's 6 rods, I think, or something for his kids, and got invited out to shoot a big old bull. And
return the favor.
Yeah, and that guy's got some good hunting spots, and he's going to get him one. And, old Bill's shot some beautiful elk. We saw a lot of them today. He shot 6x7s and a 4x5 that must have had whale tails that were 20 inches long.
Yeah.
I mean, a monster, probably in regression, but a monster 4x5. But he's never shot a true 6x6, he said. So So he's going to go out on fourth and try to get his 6x. And I guarantee he will.
I'm sure he will. Yeah, just based on all the deadheads and all the, mule deer and elk that are on his property, he's definitely, a pretty successful hunter over his career, and he's done a lot of good things. So, yeah, well, that's kind of our recap, I guess, if you will, from the last 7 days. It's been, like I said, a really nice stay here. I was fully intending on spending a lot of time camping out and spiking in, but came to the realization that a nice bed and a warm meal every night wasn't a bad thing either, and that's been a blessing to spend some time here with Cyrus and Beth and get to know them and just have a nice time. Again, whether success is, measured by, a 6-point bowl or just the camaraderie and the adventure, to me is both of those to me are measures of success. So it's been a good trip, and I'm hopeful maybe we got one more shot in the morning to, who knows, you just never know what could turn up. But these elk here on the mesa they're interesting creatures. Like literally 2 days ago and last night they were bugling their brains out, and then you and I go out tonight and it was like the light switch shut off.
Yeah, we got there at 4:30 and they were bugling pretty intensely for about 15 minutes and then just dead. I mean, you couldn't call them; they wouldn't answer.
After 5 o'clock, it just shut off.
And that's the thing, bordering the private and the way the wind was blowing tonight, or bordering the public land and the way the wind was blowing. I mean, there's a very good probability that they got winded by hunters that were kind of upstream from us, and that's just part of the game. But maybe we can knock one in the morning,
make something happen, and if not, that's again not the reason why we're here. I mean, a big part of why I like to do these types of trips is to just enjoy my time in the outdoors and really respect the animals and respect the the public lands that we get to hunt. And multiple times you and I were walking, finding, beer cans and plastic bottles. And it's sad to see that people, basically leave their trash all over the lands. And,
that's frustrating. And they, that's what causes, it's a bullshit excuse in my opinion. But at the same time, when people are out there, leaving all their beer cans or all their plastic, they just trash a campsite. The government doesn't need any more reason than they already have to shut things down, and that makes it so tough. So, yeah, I mean, I'm a huge advocate. All summer long, me and Beth will be out on the four-wheeler, and we just pick up trash. I mean, bags of it, and it makes me irate, but at the same time, if I don't do it, then they're just going to say, well, these people have been trashing this land for so long, we're just going to shut it down. And,
another reason.
And you shouldn't have to argue it, but at that point, you don't have an argument, so... Yeah, you got to, and that's something I pick it up. If you see it down, pick it up, because if people are throwing shit out, it's just going to make your hunt worse down the road, or maybe impossible. So
we have to be good stewards and, campsites. I mean, we saw that one now where those lakes are at. There was mountain house wrappers left out and all kinds of crap, which is, again, it's sad to see.
It's frustrating, especially when when you appreciate the land, and the people that don't are the ones that ruin it for the people that do. So, that's a frustrating thing. But just clean up when you see it. Just clean it up. I mean, that's what we do, and it's not that much more weight in your pack, and it can make or break a hunting area for sure.
Absolutely. So, after second season, what tags do you have left in your pocket, or at least you and Beth? I know you guys got some stuff lined up.
I've got that here in Colorado. You get that bear tag through 1st to 4th rifle. So I've got the bear tag, and then Bethany she's got a bull tag and a bear tag. And then my old man, that's for 3rd season, which is, I guess, next weekend. And then Pops he's got a cow tag, and then we both drew 4th season to either sex. So there's a good chance we'll get some down. It's got to snow by then.
Yeah.
We're at about 8,200 on the Uncompahgre Plateau, and so the weather can be fickle. We're, maybe 15 miles from, probably more like 20, 25 from the main San Juan range of the mountains, and they, they're up to 14 plus, and they get hit first, and we kind of get hit second. So I don't always love the weather, especially working outside, but when you want elk, you want snow, and so hopefully we get some and get a couple critters down.
Yeah, for sure. You guys got a few tags to fill, and like I say, hopefully out of all those tags, you guys can put an elk or two down and put some meat in the freezer and have a good plentiful winter with plenty of meat in the freezer, which is really what it's about. So
yeah, definitely.
Cool. Well, like I said, it's been good. I've had a really good time getting to know you a little more. And like I said, I've known your dad, and I've known you and met you in the past, but haven't really spent this much time.
Real hunting season.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And it's been a lot of fun, and look forward to maybe, doing it again, or having you come down maybe to California and chasing some pigs, or, having some fun down there.
Some liberals or pigs.
Yeah.
Just kidding.
There's plenty of
either
pigs.
one.
Yeah. We could probably get away with either one down there, but just don't tell them you're going to shoot them, because
under
if you
a 10
do
round
that,
mag only,
you might end up getting arrested, versus where we were at and getting threatened. We probably weren't going to get anything done there.
Well,
but
I doubt any of them listen to this podcast, so that's fine.
Yeah, it's all good.
But cool, man.
Anyway, yeah, thanks again. Thanks for the hospitality. And again, I look forward to more years of hunting Colorado, and hopefully, more successful times. And again, it's not always about, harvesting inches. It's about the adventure, and that's really what this is about. So thanks again.
Yeah, it's been a great time. And hey, y'all, I was a country musician in Texas for a long time. So if you like music, check out Cyrus James.
So how can they find you on
Man,
social media?
I don't know if I got I don't know if I got a website anymore or not, but I kind of moved back to the mountains and forgot all that. But we got a couple records out on iTunes and Spotify and all that, and I'm on Instagram and all the regular social media outlets. So if you dig good country music and you like the Texas boys, check it out.
Absolutely.
And Lucas, is great having you here. And man, hopefully we smoke something in the morning, or we're gonna have to send you home with a tag in your freezer.
That's okay. I've done that before, but yeah, when in doubt, either way, it was a good trip. So anyway, thanks again. Thanks, Cyrus, and thanks for all the hospitality, and thanks, listeners, for tuning in, and we'll catch you guys for another adventure on the RNA Outdoors podcast. Hey everyone, this is Lucas Paw, host of the RNA Outdoors podcast. Please check out Podbean and iTunes. If you have an iPhone or iPad, go to the podcast app on your device, search for RNA Outdoors, and hit the purple subscribe button. When doing this, it will automatically upload when new podcasts are loaded, and they will download into your queue. For Android users, you can access the podcast through Podbean, Stitcher, or use our website, www.rnaoutdoors.com/podcast. In addition, under the RNA Outdoors podcast channel, please leave a review and a 5-star rating. These reviews help boost our popularity and outreach. You can also follow us on our social media outlets, Twitter at RNA Outdoors, Facebook, RNA Outdoors, and Instagram, Rod and Arrow Outdoors. All links are in the show notes as well. If you like what you've heard, we hope you'll pass along our channel to your friends and colleagues. Keep up the good fight. We cannot sit by and watch the public lands devoted to wildlife protection wither away. There's simply too much at stake. Make your voice heard, speak up, and get involved with conservation efforts, and know that every little bit helps. As we say on the mountain, go farther, stay longer.